Welcome, everyone. This is International Society of Cannabis Pharmacists with our Inside the Canna Industry Part 2, focusing on testing and analytics. I'm really glad we had such a good turnout for this event. I think everyone's trying to get out of retail and finding other unique venues or avenues for pharmacists to apply their unique skills and knowledge is really the purpose of this series. So let's begin by introducing a few of our panelists today. We have Timothy, goes by Tim Schnupp. We've got Brandon Thornton, and we've got Jeremy Sackett, all three of which have some pretty good experience in the cannabis and testing space. And I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves because I think they do it much better. So we're going to start with Tim, if you don't mind getting on the microphone here.
All right, can you hear me?
Sounds good.
All right, hey guys, my name is Timothy Schnupp. Thanks for joining tonight. I graduated from the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy in 2013 and had always really spent my career as a pharmacy tech and a pharmacist in the independent retail setting, the kind of mom and pop pharmacy, as well as a little bit of time in the institutional hospital chain setting. So, you know, in the independent setting, I really gained an appetite for business operations and running a business. But I quickly came to realize when the first pharmacy that I worked at out of school sold for a fraction of what their annual gross revenue was, that there really was wasn't a bright future in pharmacy. You know, the insurance companies made it harder and harder. The margins were worse and worse. You know, the market in Maryland came about, and you know, I thought it was a great place for pharmacists. I was actually looking more on the processing side because I had some experience with compounding. We did hormone replacement therapy, veterinary compounding, topical creams, some pediatric oral formulations. So I was really interested on the processing side, and you know, dialing in and coming up with some custom formulations as more research comes out about specific cannabinoids and their you know, their purpose in therapeutics. But I kind of ended up on the analytical side, and that's kind of a long story, but you know, it's been great. I think pharmacists have a unique skill set that is very advantageous on the analytical side, where at least on a retail and even in a hospital setting, you can really process, you know, a large amount of information very fast. And that's, you know, that's what we do on the analytical side. You know, a lot of people see on the outside, all they see are this 2-page certificate of analysis, but, you know, there are 70 different analytes that have, you know, blanks, QCs, sometimes more than one dilution. And so there's a lot of information that you have to process to get to that end result of a C of A, to make sure that you know, the quality of the data that's coming out of the lab is accurate. Because ultimately, just like in pharmacy, what we do on a daily basis is for the patients. You know, we want patients to have accurately labeled products, and also we want the products to meet whatever the state limits are, and to make sure they're as safe as possible.
That's a great point. You know, safety is our #1 priority in any aspect of pharmacy. Thank you, Tim. Brandon, do you want to go next? A little bit about your background and what got you into analytics?
Yeah, sure. My name is Brandon Thornton, and I am the co-owner and CEO of ISCPh, Arkansas. You know, we are a lab that is connected with a lot of other ISCPh locations across the country. I know one of you guys said earlier you're in California, and then I think Pennsylvania and Maryland. We've got labs in those states as well. And you know, as a pharmacist, I had a similar experience as Tim. You know, I really love pharmacy and did just a little bit of everything. You know, worked in retail, worked at a hospital, worked for an HMO for a while. I worked for a company that did you know, long-term care. I you know, ended up you know, owning a pharmacy or part of a pharmacy that did you know, specialty drugs. And then when I got out of that, you know, I've always been interested in cannabis. I had a rotation with the FDA, and when I was there, I worked with the MedWatch program, and part of that was reading a lot of, just drug studies and just information about drug interaction. And I came across enough cannabis information where I just got interested in it and just thought it, was something that had a lot of potential, something that looked like, it could help. And I just kind of kept that on the radar. And then in Arkansas, where I live currently, when we had a medical amendment pass, wanted to get involved. I really liked the patient safety aspect of testing. And so just found Steep and opened the lab. And, we are ISO accredited. We actually are the only accredited lab in the state right now. And, we're a really small program, but it's a lot of fun. It's challenging. And I think that there are a lot of similarities to working in pharmacy. To Tim's point, I mean, it's a lot of information to process quickly. But then, it's a big customer service business. I mean, we are dealing with people that need results in a timely manner. It reminds me sometimes of, retail pharmacy, because I am, constantly looking at our, samples coming in, what's our turnaround time, samples going out, staffing, some of the things that I learned in pharmacy. A lot of the things are applicable in what I'm doing today.
Amen. Just another day, another dime. Jeremy, it's your turn. Please give us a little bit about your background and what got you into cannabis analytics and testing.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Melanie, and thanks for having us on this afternoon. My name is Jeremy Sackett. I am the co-founder and chief science officer of Cascadia Labs. My background, pharmacy background, went to the University of Buffalo School of Pharmacy. Graduated in 2005, and actually it sounds like I had a much shorter stint in actually in practicing pharmacy. Only worked for about 6 months coming out of school, and decided that I was going to take a bit of a personal break. I moved out west and volunteered for the Forest Service actually for a summer, chasing bull trout around the mountains and thinking I was going to be a professional fly fishing guide for a little bit, but then was drawn very quickly back into science and healthcare, and found my way to Oregon, where I worked in a contract research, manufacturing, and development company in Bend, Oregon, and worked in that space doing preclinical trial, clinical trial manufacturing and development with multiple customers, doing contract formulation in the development labs, working through that process, demonstrating feasibility, and then transferring that over to GMP clinical materials manufacturing site that was part of the same company. As I came on with that company, I was able to obtain that position with my pharmacology background, but really the analytical piece was on-the-job training. After working in the development group there for a bit, had an opportunity to take on some analytical training, and started doing analytical work in that space. And then in 2011 or so, started to realize that there was a huge potential for the cannabis plant and cannabinoid products to positively impact human health and wellness. And being a lifetime user of cannabis and having a relationship through my adult life, really was intrigued by these powerful anecdotal stories that I was seeing in the news media, and applying science and better understanding to what are the active ingredients in this plant and these products, and how do we assure that they're contaminant free. And that's really done at the very first step with analytical testing. And by providing that basis, that foundation of understanding what these active ingredients are, and ensuring that these products are contaminant free, provides that safe product for medical professionals, healthcare professionals, to then better study the outcomes of the use of those products in different populations, different disease states. And very much appreciate Tim and Brandon's comments on how pharmacy has supported their work in the comments on data processing as well as customer service. Those are both very key points. And, from my perspective, I see this opportunity of looking at a whole plant medicine, which is really exciting for me, a natural-based a wellness product or medicine product, to get it through the rigors of a clinical trial or efficacy testing and safety testing, and demonstrate positive outcomes, and being able to look at the cannabis plant with an understanding of what it takes to become an approved drug product, and working with clinical professionals now, providing services, testing services that will meet GLP requirements and soon be able to use whole plant flower in these clinical trials, really understanding what the cannabinoid and terpene content is from an analytical standpoint, and then being able to communicate with clinical healthcare providers, what those compounds are, and helping them understand, in their practice, either as a medical doctor or as a pharmacist, working with patients that are using these products to better understand what compounds might be causing those outcomes, and really using those compounds to better categorize cannabis away from a traditional indica, sativa, or just these general categorizations. It's much more prolific and diverse in the plant than the earlier kind of cannabis culture would have categorized it. So that's really been my passion in applying an understanding of the active ingredients, if you will, in a whole plant type product, and bringing it through the same scientific and clinical rigor that a small molecule drug product would undergo, and trying to find avenues for that, which, as we all know, is very challenging with current DEA restrictions and so on and so forth. But that's a bit of my background and some of my passion outside of beyond the actual day-to-day testing lab, and how we use that data to inform additional studies and practices.
So Jeremy, I'll start with you, but we will go down the line here. What is the majority of your clientele? Is it typically growers or manufacturers / processing, or do you have like patients or users that send you their materials to see, what is it?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's really matured, or I wouldn't say matured, but evolved over the last 6-7 years that we've been operating. Starting in Oregon, the basis of our customer basis was very much just self-producers. These were unlicensed, unregulated medical card holders, unlicensed and unregulated compared relative to the current requirements for licensure and regulation. You would have a medical card, be able to grow a certain amount of plants, and then maybe make a tincture, a butter, an edible, or something out of that. And that would be more of a general public, self-producing customer base, even a patient and caregiver basis of customers. But over the last 4 to 5 years specifically, as Oregon, where we started, and now in California, where we focus our operations, all cannabis producers and cannabis product producers that is sold on the open market, if you will, in retail dispensaries and stores, they have to be licensed. So we're working with licensed growers, we're working with licensed extract and product makers, and licensed distributors as our primary customer base. But we certainly open up and are able to accept samples from personal or medical grows. And we do have a good maybe 10 to 15% of our samples still do come from that customer base. And another new customer base that has really come online quite a bit in the last year is hemp producers, hemp farmers, and hemp product makers across the country that we can now work with that are outside of our state, which is a really exciting opportunity to build the business, if you will.
Yeah, Brandon or Tim, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Here,
Brandon.
In Arkansas. Yeah, hey, can you hear me? This is Brandon.
Yeah, sounds good. Keep going.
Okay. Yeah, so here in Arkansas, most of our customers, we don't have a lot of growers. We don't have any sort of home grow, so we're not getting customer samples. Everything that we test needs to be within our seed to sale state system. So, that part of it's not there, but most of the groups here are vertically integrated, meaning that, they are, growing, plant material. They are using that for extraction. They're making infused products. And so, we're testing kind of at every level there. And then, we do work with hemp producers, and that you can kind of break that down into, processors that are, buying from farmers. And so we're testing for both of those groups. And then there's sort of some larger product makers that, are making topicals and, different CBD vape pens, which are pretty controversial right now, and that type of thing.
Excellent. Tim, I'm going to let you answer if you have something, and then I'm going to go back to that contaminated vape. I think that's always the hot topic right now.
Yeah, sure. So our client base, I didn't really give anyone my background. So I started Atlantic Test Labs with a partner in 2017 in Maryland, and we're opening a lab up in Pennsylvania. So our customers are really the licensed cultivators and processors of those states. Unlike Jeremy in California, we unfortunately were not permitted, at least in Maryland, to test samples from private patients, which I would love to do, but we're just not permitted by the state. And like Brandon and Jeremy also said, we're seeing a large uptick in business from hemp farmers and CBD manufacturers. So at least in Maryland, a lot of hemp farmers are about to harvest their first year crop in Maryland, which is really exciting. So it's very interesting to see what the results are looking like from an analytical side for all of these farmers, and also working with CBD manufacturers, from large scale guys that have flash chromatography systems to, very home style guys extracting small batches of hemp with Everclear. So it's a broad spectrum, but it's really interesting to see how the hemp and CBD industry are evolving, and really anxious to see how that is going to evolve as well.
Awesome, everyone. So back to the fun topic, the unfun topic, I should say, of contamination of our vapes. I know we don't have any Massachusetts representatives here today. I kind of looked at our participants, but their governor released a statewide ban on both e-cigarettes, including nicotine and cannabis. Have you guys, I feel like California's definitely had some cases. I'm not sure about Maryland or Arkansas. Unfortunately, in my home state of Minnesota, we've had some people that have not only been sickened by their vapes, but one person actually died. So pretty serious stuff. Have any of you guys adopted any different protocols or policies? I know there was one company in Massachusetts that has been able to identify a reagent to find vitamin E derivatives, which is one of the suspected contaminants. Any comments to that? Any thoughts? Feel free to just shout it out.
So in Maryland, I'm not working in Maryland, but we have a sister lab in Maryland called Pinnacle CT, and they just developed a method on HPLC UV for vitamin E acetate analysis. And then Maryland also, when they first came out with their regulations in 2017, and we really started testing in 2018, for some reason, concentrates were not required to be tested for heavy metals, but back in, I believe, May of this year, the commission started to require any kind of concentrates or all concentrates to be tested for heavy metals as well.
Jeremy, I feel like you might have something to say to that as well, because I think when Oregon first started their cannabis program, they still might not, do they test for heavy metals up there?
No, Oregon does not test for heavy metals in the finished products, but there's also a requirement in Oregon regulation, and I believe California regulation, I'd have to double check, that through the good manufacturing practice the manufacturing regulations, it's illegal to add any additive or adulterant of any type to the cannabinoid concentrate or extract. Not saying that eliminates all, everybody. There may be still some bad actors that skirt around the rule, and there's no true, testing requirement that, is doing a full scan type review of that or trying to find. But there are certain the glycols and polyethylene glycol and a few other additives that are tested in a residual solvent panel on concentrates. So we are looking for some of those in Oregon. But there is not a heavy metal testing. There is a requirement that or a limitation that you cannot add anything to that cannabinoid product. So no excipient of any kind, except for cannabis-derived terpenes that are added back into the product. Just a comment on our laboratory, we have not yet adopted any specific testing protocols beyond, what our current service levels are to address the vape concerns specifically. I'm of the personal and professional opinion at this point that it's still a bit early to determine, what the specific contaminants are in all cases. I do think that there is good preliminary data around the vitamin C, the vitamin E issue, but I think that we will continue to monitor what the health authorities' investigations uncover and start to develop methodology as more firm conclusions are made. And also just a comment that from the information that I have reviewed in both news media and some more official reports is it seems to be that a significant number of these products are unregulated or, haven't undergone any testing. And I think that's an important point. And please correct me, anybody, if I'm off base with that thinking at this time. I haven't really checked my my updates in the last week or so on the issue. So some thoughts there.
Yeah, like the flavoring definitely being a big component of it. And good for you. I always mistakenly say polyethylene glycol because I just love Miralax, but to each their own. So I kind of wanted to go back to your backgrounds as pharmacists. And if you can, any way you like, a short few words or a nice, poetic, eloquent haiku. Just kidding. But, how much of your pharmacy knowledge are you applying in your day-to-day? And do you feel like it sets your business up against the rest because you have that degree? Sorry, I didn't pick someone. My bad. Why is it so
We're all just being too polite.
All right, we're going to start at the top of my list. We're going to start with Tim. Take it away, Tim.
All right. Well, from a therapeutic standpoint, at least from the laboratory, I don't really use the therapeutic and the liver enzymes and ADME knowledge on a daily basis. What I do use a lot is just basic math ratios, converting from ppm to weight percent, performing dilutions. So the lab part of pharmacy definitely came in handy, and it's funny because
the fun part. I see.
Yeah, like the compounding part where you're kind of working backwards, right? You're not making the formulation. You're kind of working backwards to determine how much sample you used in order to fit the expected results within your calibration curve. So you're using the same principles, just from a different perspective, I think. But it was funny because I always remember, not in pharmacy school, but one of the prereqs for pharmacy school, we had to take analytical chemistry. And I remember sitting in that class, and I'm like, when the hell am I ever going to use this knowledge? And, of course, I get into the lab, and I'm like, shit, I wish I would have paid more attention in analytical chemistry.
Awesome.
Such is life.
Yeah. Brandon, do you want to go next?
Man, I feel like that I'm a little bit different because in Arkansas, we have a requirement for every dispensary to have a pharmacist consultant. And what that means is the pharmacist consultant has to help the dispensary come up with patient education materials, also does a 1 hour in-service for employees every year, and then is on call whenever the dispensary is open for patient calls. And, you know, I've got a lot of, you know, we only have 32 dispensaries in Arkansas. And through this process, I just got to know a lot of the people that own and operate the dispensaries. And there was just a need for a pharmacist to do that. So I agreed to do that for a couple. And now I'm doing it for like 12 of the 32.
Wow.
And so it's you know, that is a big part of my job. I mean, I'm going to many dispensaries anyway, just for, you know, I go pick up samples. I go, you know, meet with owners, but it's kind of fun. I enjoy it. I don't get a whole lot of patient calls. I feel like that, you know, the staff or either the patients that are coming in end up not having a whole lot of calls. When I get calls, they're usually, you know, drug interactions. They are things that maybe the bud tenders want to hand off, you know, which is great. I'll probably get, in the course of a week, I might get 2 phone calls. So it's not a lot. You know, in the course of working in the lab, you know, just to echo what these guys say, I think a lot of the, you know, just the conversions, just, you know, back in, gosh, I don't even remember the name of the class, but just in pharmacy school where we would, you know, just some of the lab type stuff, some of that, but it is a lot different than what I was doing before, you know, which I like. You know, some of the, you know, kind of management and just keeping customers happy and you know, treating people well is, you know, kind of universal. But if it wasn't for the pharmacist consultant stuff, I'm not sure how much it would kind of bleed over.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, Jeremy here, my honest first response to that was not at all when that question came out, Melanie. But, you know, in rethinking it a little, no, but, you know, in rethinking it a little bit on the day-to-day basis, you know, it really isn't used very much at all what was, in my opinion, what was learned specifically in pharmacy school. Certainly the foundation necessary to successfully go through pharmacy school, from organic chemistry, you know, even aspects of medicinal chemistry and, you know, those general, you know, dilutions and units of measurement throughout, you know, that foundation. And I think really also the necessity, I guess, not in you know, the way that you have to have attention to detail, think critically, really understand the importance of the decisions you're making that is kind of imparted throughout the pharmacy school track. I think that comes forward on a day-to-day basis, but, you know, the actual pharmacokinetics, dynamics, you know, other aspects of what I really consider pharmacy school are used not very often, unfortunately, you know, in my day-to-day work. But what is really exciting and where I see the vision as we're moving through, you know, some maturation of these markets and the products that are available, as I was commenting earlier, is, you know, the pharmacists being the medicine experts, right, and having this opportunity to do the testing specifically around cannabinoids and terpenes, and understanding the chemotaxonomy and how the plant and derivative products can be categorized based on, you know, what the primary components and ratios of cannabinoids and terpenes are, and being able to understand that and then bring that forward almost as, you know, not in a pharmacy consultant manner to retail shops, but in an educational opportunity through presentations or engagement with the industry, other sectors of the industry, and helping bring that information forward. It does very much feel like practicing pharmacy, because you're, you know, maybe not working directly with the patient or working with drug interactions, but really having that deep understanding of, you know, a type 1 cannabinoid terpenoline dominant cultivar may not be best for somebody that has high anxiety, but moving towards a type 2 with a mixed THC CBD ratio and, you know, higher beta caryophyllene or some other linalool terpene compounds may be a better fit for that individual as they're, you know, trying to determine what product might fit their needs in their goals with consuming cannabis. So that's really exciting, and I think one of the, you know, again, one of the things that I'm most passionate about in understanding and communicating what the makeup of these products is out to the industry and also healthcare professionals.
Awesome. So now it's time for an interesting anecdote or something fun. Surprise me. But I don't want to say there will be a judges panel, but perhaps. So let's start with you, Jeremy, and work our way back.
Interesting anecdote. I think it may be an unfortunate anecdote. And through the launching a very early testing laboratory in Oregon, and being at the pre-regulation in many ways. We were operating where only the dispensary was regulated, and there was not much regulation, if any regulation, on other producers and processors. We did and still maintain a community support program where we were working with different families and private individuals that would either purchase product or be given product, and we would test that product for free or no cost, depending on the circumstances. And unfortunately, we found early that a lot of these products didn't contain what they said they did. And I'm very confident in the analytical results. We run validated methods. We've done comparative analysis, round robins, and we're working with other testing laboratories to confirm these. But families that would be purchasing a CBD tincture, one example, and for very high cost, especially at that point, 6-7 years ago, and then it would have half of the CBD that's claimed on the label or less at times, either due to degradation or, bad actors producing that product. But, the fortunate and the bright side of this is that as we've moved through the last several years and regulations have become more robust, and there have been, enforcement of regulations on bad actors or recalls of products, we've seen that shift significantly. So it's really, for me, a good movement in the right direction towards quality products that have, the ingredients that are listed on the label, and that information is available for the patient, for the consumer, and bringing more confidence into these products is absolutely necessary for wider adoption and use by healthcare providers and patients and consumers. So hopefully that was the kind of anecdote you were looking for. Maybe it's just an anecdote is a story, right? So that's just off the top of my head.
I immediately thought, why did I say fun story? In this testing environment, we're probably not going to hear anything that I want to hear. But nevertheless, it needs to be heard. These are actual patients that are affected by this. And I think at the end of the day, we need to remember, even if it's just an N of one, that single person could be benefited or harmed from this. So, testing is absolutely important to our industry, and really any botanical or drug in that sense. Don't even talk about the ranitidine recalls going on, but we'll get there. Brandon, do you want to go on next with your anecdote, please?
Yeah, sure. So, about 3 months into the Arkansas program, we use BioTrack as our seed-to-sale tracking system in Arkansas, and how that works is, we complete all the testing, and then we upload data to BioTrack, and that's really what goes on labels that is printed and is given to patients at the dispensary level. And BioTrack, who, incidentally, the owner of BioTrack is a pharmacist.
I was going to say.
Yeah. And so they had a glitch in their system. So there was one batch of cannabis flower that was, sold through a couple dispensaries. And they had a glitch in their system where the total THC somehow just got doubled on the labels. And so for one batch, it was a 15% flower, but it came out and it looked like it was 30% on the label. And this was the same, cultivar that had been produced. This was maybe the 10th harvest of the same, and it always would fall with between 14 and 16%. And so, people started buying it. Word got out. and people from all over the state were coming into these two dispensaries to buy this 30% flower. And I tell you what, like all over social media, people were talking about how it was the best thing they've ever had in their entire lives. People would come back weeks later and complain that, the stuff they're buying now is not nearly as strong. We knew about it, and we figured it out. We got a call from the dispensary to ask about it, and we looked it up and we said, yeah, we haven't tested anything that's near 30%. And we talked to the state, and instead of just sort of fessing up to it, the state just said, well, let's just pull the rest of it off and then we'll, relabel it. But it's still kind of an urban legend in Arkansas of this magical 30% flower.
Well, if you pay enough, they'll keep increasing. You guys are great.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Tim, how about you? You go next with an anecdote, please.
Yeah, you know what? I couldn't really think of one. I'm glad you didn't have to go first. But when Brandon, Jeremy, good job, by the way. That was good. When Brandon was saying earlier about how pharmacy is like, or what parts of pharmacy are like the testing lab, and he mentioned customer service, I had never thought about it, but that is so true. So, I was thinking about how in retail pharmacy, you get your customer and their copay goes from like $10 one month, and then the next month it's $20, and they're irate and they're asking you, why did you do this to them? And you're like, I don't know. I mean, it's your insurance company. There are tens of thousands of insurance companies. I don't know. it's what we submitted the claim, and that's what it came back at. And we kind of get that on the grower side too. Unfortunately, there's a huge lack of education around, quote unquote quality of medical cannabis products, and I think everyone just by default goes to potency, and it's such BS. We're seeing 30% strains in Maryland left and right. I mean, that's 30% in Maryland is the old 20. It's insane. But you get these growers, right? And it's like they grow a strain 1 month, and then 3 months later they're harvesting again, and it's off by like 2%. And they're like, what is wrong with your lab? This should be the same every time. I was like, there are little variables, and it's a plant, and it can be off by, sometimes we see plus or minus 10%. It's like going to the supermarket and getting a pint of strawberries and expecting every strawberry to taste and smell and look the same. It doesn't happen. Even if you're cloning off a mother plant, there's little variables that affect the plant, and a little can go a long way. So I thought that was funny, and it reminded me of the whole customer service thing, that it's just the expectations are so funny when you're dealing with customers like that don't fully understand either the way insurance works or how the analytical side works.
No, absolutely. And I wish we had more time to talk about what you guys do and how you're accredited and, how you're able to, certify that your testing results are valid. But we're going to keep it nice, short, and sweet here. Do you guys have a final tip for any pharmacists or pharmacy students that are interested in entering the testing space or the cannabis analytic field? Tim, let's start with you and work our way back down. Jeremy?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is if you really want to get into the industry, you just got to go for it, and you have to be persistent. When I was leaving the traditional pharmacy role, I was actually working part-time in a hospital and full-time at an independent, and all the hospital pharmacists kind of laughed at me when I told them I was going to get into the medical cannabis industry. They're all, isn't that federally illegal? And how are you going to do that? What happens if the state comes and takes your license away? And you take a risk, and you got to be persistent. And kind of like Jeremy said, is I didn't really know anything about the analytical side, so I was all self-taught back in 2017. And you got to be humble, and you got to talk to people that know more than you, and that can relay that information to you so you can run with it. And you have to be persistent. I I applied for a processor license in Maryland and just got word that we didn't get it. And that's actually the third application that I've submitted that I've not been successful in. And, it's how the industry goes. You get your wins and your losses, and you have to keep your head up and move forward. So don't get discouraged, and be persistent.
Awesome. Brandon, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, to Tim's point, the first thing that came to mind is, take a, analytical chemistry class. I feel like that when I got into this, I envisioned my role a little differently. I think just because of, just getting accredited and needing help in the lab and just needing, just extra hands, I had to get really familiar with instrumentation and, and instruments break and you have to fix them and, you got to get really good at troubleshooting. I feel like that, if I could go back in time, I would have taken more, chemistry, in particular analytical chemistry, and paid attention and learned as much as I could.
Very good. Jeremy?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great points. I think that, if you're already gone through a pharmacy program and maybe a practicing pharmacist or near to that point, if you are going to get into the testing sector, definitely developing either good partnerships with individuals that have that background, or taking those classes is critically important. But depending on where you want to find an opportunity in the cannabis industry, I would say attend a few. There are a few very good science-focused conferences in the cannabis industry. There's the Cannabis Science Conference in Portland, Oregon, that usually brings in some very technical presentations, and the vendors in Portland, Oregon, and the vendors are equipment manufacturers, analytical lab suppliers, lots of different technologies. That's a very good conference, as well as, and I may have my acronym and the conference name wrong. I believe it's the ICRC or ICCR, International Cannabis Research Conference. That's the preeminent health science conference for cannabinoid research that I believe is every other year in the United States and every other year in Europe somewhere. Those, attending conferences, listening to seminars, engaging with the industry are definitely, the ways to start learning what those opportunities would be. And then as you find a path into the industry, just be ready to, work hard. The stamina needed to, own and operate and launch a business is way beyond what I ever thought I would need in this industry. And from other folks that have taken on entrepreneurial endeavors in other industries and come into cannabis, I hear consistently from, many of the folks that I work with that are very dedicated professionals that, it's grinding. There's a lot of work. It's nonstop with changing regulations. You just got to be ready to roll with the punches, if you will, and adapt to changes, and know that you're going to have to change very often in these new markets and new industries, and be ready to participate in that change. I've always found that volunteering time and expertise to the rule makers and standardization committees, and providing, information that is drawn from other industries, good practices from, pharmaceutical manufacturing or natural product manufacturing or food technology is very helpful to help solidify and hopefully stabilize those regulations in the industry and markets around them. So best of luck for anybody that's looking to get into the industry. It's really refreshing to see a lot more professionals in the industry now, from business professionals, science and healthcare professionals than we had, 5-10 years ago. So that's a very exciting shift.
I love it. So we're almost done here. I'm just going to leave us with some few lasting comments. I'm going to see if I can share my screen correctly. But Brandon was one of our presenters at our Clinical Safety and Quality Consideration CE. So this is available on our website under Resources, Members Only, and then the top is Continuing Education. This is accredited for 3 continuing hours. And I need to update this RSVP link, my bad guys. But besides that, it really is a great review and gave me a great understanding of, the analytical side of medical cannabis products. And again, more than that, but any herbal medicine that is subject to this discrepancy or this irregularity and these variables that can affect our patients. Other than that, we do have another patient case report series coming up. It is on Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And you can RSVP, members are free. RSVP on our website here at the bottom, all of our upcoming events at your service. And then I forgot to mention the Clinical Quality and Safety CE. It's $60, but if you're a member, you save 60%. So you only have to pay $25, which is a steal. So take advantage of it while it's still live and on demand. I believe it will end in March. And thank you so much to our wonderful speakers. You guys are excellent, and I thoroughly appreciate your time and expertise. And if you guys in the audience have any questions, I guess we can take a few questions now. Otherwise, their emails are listed here as well, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to help you out. So if anyone has any questions, there's a few ways to do it. You can unmute yourself and join the conversation, or there is a way to chat the group. I can send a chat to everyone. You can send it to everyone, or you can select a specific person. For some reason on here, my name is like Cannabis. So if you have a question, chat it over to Cannabis. But again, thank you everyone so much. I think that was wonderful. And this recording will be up in, I'm going to say, give me a week. That should be a reasonable amount of time. And if you signed up, you'll get this link in your email as well. Thank you, Tim, Brandon, and Jeremy.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Melanie and Tim and Brandon.
Woo! Oh,
Yeah, take care, y'all.
Thank you.
Yep, have a good night.
Definitely, thank you. Have a good evening.